Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be continuing with our Space Marines chapters videos with a look at the Carcharodons or Space Sharks. Now the Space Sharks are quite the popular chapter within the Warhammer 40,000 universe, as they have a reputation for being brutal Space Marines warriors with a history which is shrouded in mystery. So we will go through the lore that we do have with you today. Now, the Carcharodons, as I've mentioned, are also known as the Space Sharks, or if you're speaking High Gothic, they are the Carcharodons Astra. Now, they have a reputation, for all who know of them, for brutality and ruthlessness when dealing with enemies of the Imperium, even when those enemies may have at one time been friends. Now, their founding chapter is relatively unknown, although it's alleged that it's the Raven Guard, although there is little that can be drawn between the stoic Raven Guard and the brutal Space Sharks. Now, their chapter master is Tyberos the Redwake, and their colours are dark grey with inset black shoulders, and of course usually they're covered in the blood of their enemies, although that's not technically part of their paint scheme. Now, their homeworld is actually unknown, as they are a fleet-based chapter, and they don't have a known battle cry either, although just general roaring and shouting could probably constitute it. They are from unknown origins, so we don't really know who founded them, although, as I said, the Raven Guard are a likely candidate. And they came to the attention of the Imperium at large in the early days of the Badab War, cutting a brutal and bloody swath through the rebel Space Marines ranks at the time of that great rebellion. Now, no one can say when they first came into existence. There are rumours that they appeared in the 35th millennium, and even rumours that stretch back as far as the Astropath Wars in the 32nd millennium. As I've said before, the history of the Imperium is rather fragmented, so we don't really know when they first came to be. One thing is certain though, the chapter was given a sacred duty at their founding to travel the empty spaces beyond the Imperium's borders, to seek out and destroy any encroaching enemies of mankind. This task was possibly given to them for the rest of time, so we don't know if and when their crusade will ever end, or if we'll ever see the Space Sharks again within the Imperium. And there's not a huge amount else I can say about the Space Sharks beyond the Badab War, so I will be going directly into their involvement in the Badab War and showing you exactly how they earned their reputation within the wider Imperium. Now, their entry into the war was very sudden. No one expected them to arrive, and they just appeared in the Badab sector near a loyalist fleet. Now, there was a lot of fear and panic because, of course, the chapter was completely unrecognised by the Imperials who were there. However, when the Nictor, which is an Old English word for water monster, and the chief battle barge of the chapter's fleet, opened a hailing frequency, it informed the loyalists of their intent and of their allegiance, and thus the panic was quickly settled with the arrival of this new and rather motley fleet of medium and light warships accompanying the battle barge. Once their loyalty was established, they were quickly assigned duty and took part in the war with gusto. Now, this is where they quickly established their bloody reputation, for they engaged in a campaign of systematic annihilation of the worlds of the Endymion cluster, whose inhabitants still owed some loyalty to the rebel Mantis warriors, who were a Space Marine chapter who rebelled against the Imperium with Lord Huron, who was the leader of the rebel forces. The worlds were smashed apart by the Space Sharks, which drew out the Mantis warriors who could not stand by and watch their loyal subjects be so brutally slain by the Space Sharks. However, it was a ruse, and the Mantis warriors were completely crushed by the Carcharodons, destroying their forces and effectively removing a majority of their fighting force from the rest of the rebellion. Unable to deny their effectiveness despite his own misgivings, the commander of the Imperial forces, Commander Carab Cullen, gave the Carcharodons the responsibility of attacking the primary infrastructure of Badab Primus, the primary world of the Badab sector, during the final battle against Lord Huron. They attacked with their typical ruthless efficiency, effectively sabotaging a large majority of the Hive city's reactors on the planet, causing monumental explosions that destroyed the cities themselves, a large proportion of the enemy forces, and in fact almost destroyed the planet itself, and definitely led to the complete decline of that world as a viable planet for the Imperium. It also did a lot of damage to their allies, the explosions taking out large swaths of the Imperial forces who were attacking the rebels. To this day, many loyalist chapters who took part in the Badab Crusade still hold the Carcharodons in low regard for their complete disrespect for life of any kind, even that amongst their own allies. At the war's end, after Lord Huron had been defeated and the Badab Crusade over, the Carcharodons were called in by the Fire Angels Space Marine chapter to help bring rebellious worlds back into compliance. It is in this time that the chapter visited the Tranquility System, a one-time recruiting ground for the Mantis warriors. Now, the Carcharodons completely destroyed the Mantis Warriors' former bastions, looting all the stockpiles that were left over, and also abducted an entire generation of young men to replenish the chapter after the losses they suffered in the Badab War. They forced the pre-adolescents to fight to the death to earn the right into the Carcharodons chapter, and any who would not fight were killed anyway. With that, the space sharks completely disappeared, the last sighting of them seeing them heading out into the dark void beneath the galactic plane, apparently hunting out some unknown enemy in that darkness and continuing their crusade against the unknown enemies of mankind. Now, this is the last we really heard of the space sharks, but I can go into a little bit of their organisation and tactics that were picked up during the time that the Imperial forces observed them. Now, the Carcharodons roughly follow the organisational tenets laid down by the Codex Astartes. However, they otherwise show considerable variation in the tactics they prefer to use. They prefer shock and awe assaults, bloody, brutal and utterly damaging to the enemy, with lightning raids by infantry their preferred tactic in dealing with the enemy. Their force organisation is Codex standard, although units are usually augmented by an auxiliary force of scouts and dedicated squads of Terminator armoured veterans, enabling all units to be light on their feet and have heavy backup with their firepower, which give them a lot more flexibility than some of the chapters have on the battlefield. When resistance proves too heavy, or the reaction of the enemy too swift for their lightning raids, the chapter's forces often quickly withdraw to avoid heavy losses and, more importantly, to move and strike in another direction. This is repeated again and again, going in and out, not allowing the enemy time to form a defence, and it allows them to find any weaknesses within the enemy's line. Once it is found, it is fully exploited with the full brunt of the Carcharodons' forces brought to bear, and the assault is more than enough to punch through enemy lines and enable a swift end to any conflict that they're in. Now, a final note on the Carcharodons with their armoury. Most of their armour is actually Mark V plate, which for any of you that have watched my Space Marines armoury video would be the Heresy era suit, which means there's a lot of armoured nodules on their Mark V armour, protecting it from damage and allowing a very high degree of resistance. Now, it's not known why the Mark V is so widely used, and also the fact that a lot of their weaponry dates from the same era, which is rather surprising for a later founding chapter, but does lend credence to the fact they may be descended from the Raven Guard, whose own supplies of armour and weapons were badly depleted during the Horus Heresy. Now, their Terminator armour in particular shows extensive modification in order to keep them combat worthy and allow them to continue with their assaults. Now, they do seem to have a fully stocked and sizable amount of vehicles available to them. However, as I've mentioned, the Carcharodons as a whole seem to prefer infantry-based assaults over armoured assaults by vehicles. So that comes to the end of the lore that I have available to me on the Space Sharks or Carcharodons. Now, as I said with my last video, if you do have anything else you think I've missed, do add it in the comments below, or go to the Vox Relay, which is the Vaults of Terra forum, which we linked in the description below. Next up, we will do our final armoury video for the Imperial Guard, which will be mainly detailing their equipment and some of the other items that are used by the Imperial Guard. If you have any other suggestions of chapters you want to see next, or if you have any videos you prefer to see on the Vaults of Terra in the near future, then do let us know in the comments below again, or on the Vox Relay. And if you have anything else you'd like to share with us, don't hesitate to let us know. So that's everything today. See you next time on the Vaults of Terra.